In order to emerge from the recession caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that we need to invest state money in programs, services, and infrastructure. But it will be challenging to invest in our future with our state facing such large budget deficits. That's why we support raising revenue through a fair tax system. With more revenue, we can address social, racial, and wealth inequality to make our state stronger and help us recover from the recession faster. First, some context. Let's look at wealth inequality in America and how our country's wealth is split up among Americans. The very wealthy, meaning the top 1%, hold roughly 40% of all wealth in our country. The next 19% account for about half of all wealth in America, meaning a whopping 90% of all wealth in our country is held by the top 20%. On the other hand, only 2% of wealth in this country belongs to the lower 60% of earners, which includes the middle class, the lower middle class, and the poor. There's been a massive shift in wealth to the country's top earners, and it's a growing problem. That's why we support raising revenue through a fair tax system. With more revenue, we can address social, racial, and wealth inequality to make our state stronger and help us recover from the recession faster. Here in Rhode Island, we have a plan to help fix it. The Revenue for Rhode Island Coalition has introduced legislation that will add one new tax bracket for the top 1% of earners, from 5.99% to 8.99% on adjusted gross income above $475,000. This proposal will generate an estimated $128 million in new revenues that can be used to fund vital public services, and recent polling shows it's supported by more than 2/3 of Rhode Islanders. If you earn less than $475,000, you are not impacted by the bill. If you make $500,000, under our proposal, you'll only have to pay an extra $750. And if you make $1 million a year, you'll have to pay an extra $15,750. To put that into perspective, the top 1% has benefited the most from a number of federal and state income tax cuts over the last 2 decades. From the Bush tax cuts in the early 2000s, to the Carcieri state tax cuts in 2010, to the Trump tax cuts in 2017, which alone saved the average 1%er a whopping $35,000 per year. The reduction in personal income taxes for the very wealthy has created a tax system in Rhode Island in which lower and middle class families pay a higher percentage of their income in total taxes than the wealthiest 1% when factoring in income tax, property tax, and sales tax. The poorest Rhode Islanders actually pay 50% more as a percent of income than the wealthiest 1%. What's the result of all this? While the rich have gotten a lot richer, we've simultaneously neglected to properly fund schools and public education, infrastructure, state funding to cities and towns, our veterans home, programs for senior citizens, services for individuals living with developmental disabilities, and more. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated these inequalities even further, disproportionately harming the working poor and people of color. As we now face hundreds of millions of dollars in budget deficits, state leaders have a moral obligation to respond to this crisis in a way that does not increase existing inequalities of race, ethnicity, gender, disability, or economic status. Before we cut vital services even further, we must look to the wealthiest first to contribute their fair share. In early 2020, we put forth a proposal to ensure tax fairness in Rhode Island that generates revenue for our community needs. Now, it's an issue of economic necessity. Contact your legislators today. Tell them to pass Senate Bill 2801, sponsored by Senator William Conley, and House Bill 7921, sponsored by Representative Karen Alzate. Visit www.revenueforri.org to learn more and to take action.